I'll sometimes use this image to talk about the two, you could say, broadly speaking, two vantage points on reality, um, and that image is of like a dial or a rheostat switch. And if you're all the way over on one side of this particular metaphoric dial, you're you're perceiving the world's being perceived as it ordinarily is, it would seem, kind of typically, as consisting of identifiable things as identifiable phenomena, all the stuff of life, right? We've got a dictionary um, filled with all these words that very strongly don't just suggest, but seem to prove, in one sense, that we have been able to identify what things are and hence language them and speak about them with one another and talk to ourselves about all the stuff going on, and including, of course, ourselves as being something identifiable and nameable and describable and categorizable, right? So that's just the pretty much would seem kind of default consensus sort of view that we live in a world that is in fact describable as a world and as a world consisting of the stuff that the world consists of, including the objects of the world, we think of as the material objects of the world, the stuff, and then also the, if you will, subjective world of experience that and all the ways we describe that experience as well as thoughts and sensations and visual images and memory and emotions and so on. So in that, all the way over, if you will, on that side of the dial, essentially the world is what we think it is. The world is, and we are as we conceive of ourselves and the world to be. And for the most part, there's not a lot of questioning of that. Um, and of course, over on this side of the dial, if you will, there's the kind of the layers of interpretation of conceiving. We could say there's the initial layer of um, the labeling of the phenomena. So we would consciousness, of course, is doing all this, right? Somehow, the intelligence of the universe. We might say, oh, well, I'm describing the moment that's happening now as a Zoom meeting and you sitting here participating in the Zoom meeting. But really, that process of interpretation is happening inexplicably and mysteriously as well. No matter what we seem to know about that process in some sort of scientific sense of how that's coming about, it's pure mystery as to really how the world is even being conceived and reified right over on this side. So, but here we are, and on this side of the dial, it's like, yeah, here's the Zoom meeting hosted by this guy, John Aston, and you are who you think you are, and you're listening to what I'm sharing and contemplating it and so on and feeling it. And then all the way on the other side of this dial, let's just say there's kind of a spectrum, but if we kind of pin the needle over on this side, the other side of the dial of experience, how we can experience the world, how this can be experienced, we discover that everything we think is what we think it is not what we think it is at all. In fact, over on this side, if you will, of the dial or the rheostat switch that I'm speaking about metaphorically, what on the other side is seen as identifiable and resolvable on this other side is realized to be not utterly without identity, without resolvability. This side, it's definable. This side, it's utterly beyond the reach of definition and description completely. And we could say there's sort of gradations, as you move, as one maybe begins to move from the fixed, rigid ideas about what things are. Maybe something starts to loosen up and there's more some questioning going on about like, well, maybe my ideas about things are not the whole story. You know, there's much more to life than what I think is going on. So those descriptive frameworks maybe start to relax a little bit and loosen up, and there's more flexibility. People are more capable of taking different perspectives on things. They're less dogmatically, rigidly locked into their perspectives. But still, there's a belief that, okay, I can still find a subtler, more open, more flexible way of holding this, in terms of modeling it, conceiving it, mapping it, and so on, right? So the maps, get more nuanced and subtler maybe as we move kind of in this direction towards the indescribable. But I want to, as I really am doing much, if not most of the time, really exploring this side of the dial with you, which is the discovery of a perspective on reality in which it's completely unfindable as something that you could put your finger on. It's utterly ungraspable, utterly mysterious, utterly indeterminate and unresolvable. And for me, in my own experience of exploring this, the most powerful, simplest, obvious way to discover this is to see how what we think of as a moment that is pin downable in one sense, that I can determine what the moment is descriptively. Like this moment is, I could describe as a Zoom meeting, like this phenomena that's here, that's appearing this moment, right? I mean, I'm not at the beach right now. I'm on a Zoom meeting. So, right, I can make those distinctions seemingly. And in other words, I can know what this moment is in one very real sense, seemingly. So here's the moment, and here's my invitation to you right now is to feel what's here, what seems to be showing up that let's take it like, okay, so here's the Zoom meeting, or here's, John speaking. Like you can identify that, right? And distinguish it from other phenomena, seemingly. But if you're with this experience, which of course you're only with it in the instant that it's appearing, we're never with it in the previous instant, are we? Like, okay, so here's this moment, and then this moment's gone, right? And it's gone. So what is it? It's 10 after the hour. We've been here together for 10 minutes. The 10 minutes that we've been here are gone, aren't they? They're completely gone. They are not here. They're not experienceable. We can conjure them up in memory, what's been going on for the last 10 minutes as I've been speaking. But experientially, they're absolutely gone. They're unfindable, right? But we think somehow, and of course, what's going to come in the next 10 minutes is also unfindable until it's being experienced. So then what is findable? Well, presumably the the lauded present moment, the powerful now that we can write books about and find this present moment. Okay, so here's the present moment. Like, okay, this that's here right now. Now, feel that. You are feeling that. That's the only thing you're ever feeling. You're never feeling the past. You're never feeling the future. You're feeling this instant. And however it might be being rendered and described and right and resolved as being whatever you think it is. You feel what's here. And here's the invitation, which is feel the perception, say, of what you call a Zoom meeting. Like here it is. Here's the Zoom meeting. Like it's not any more complicated than that. Here's the Zoom meeting. Now feel that what you're calling a Zoom meeting as an experience or as a some as a not as a thing, but as an activity of experiencing, because that's how you know the presumed thing called the Zoom meeting. Feel that and notice how alive the experience is. And in its aliveness, it is not static, it's alive, right? It's not frozen, it's moving, it would seem. There's a sense of the aliveness of what we call the moment, right? You feel that? So the Zoom meeting, so-called Zoom meeting, is not something static and fixed, but something very dynamic and flowing and alive, wouldn't you say, as an experience? We could say the thing, the it called the Zoom meeting, is not a thing or an it, not at least one that we could put our finger on and go, oh, now this is it. You see? Because the it that we put our finger on, if you try to put your finger on the moment to say how is it and what is it, can you actually do it? Or is it like this? I have a little prop, so um, I can't really do magic, but an old friend in high school taught me this kind of cool little thing. I'm not very good at it, but here's the moment, right? Well, I'll show you this side of it. Here's the moment, right? So now you're looking at the moment and you feel like you can identify it. It's a Zoom meeting. Now, as you feel the moment, and then you go to try to pinpoint the moment and describe it and pin it down, this is what it is. It's like this. It's gone, isn't it? The moment's not here for any time. But it seems like something remains, like something's still there, but now it looks different. And then you go to try to put your finger on that and pinpoint it, and it vanishes again, right? And then it seems like it's still there, but it vanishes again whenever you try to put your finger on it, right? Can you ever get to a point where it holds still and doesn't immediately vanish the instant that you look at it, the instant that you feel it? Does it actually stay in a way that you can say, this is it, and this is how it is, and this is what it is? Or is it just constantly disappearing? Does it actually hold still, or does it just keep vanishing? You see what I mean? Which raises the most profound question, which is it actually ever here as something? The really crazy thing is that we have this reality is doing this thing. Speaking of magic, my crude attempt at a little magic trick, reality is the ultimate magician because reality shows up as all this stuff called a world in all its complexity and elaboration. And I mean, it's unbelievable. The the way it shows up as something very patterned and identifiable. That's the world of form, the forms of the world, including us. So it really does. The implication is one of there's absolutely identifiable forms, and let me talk to you about them. And we can talk to each other about them, and we can maybe revel in them or maybe be absolutely horrified and traumatized and stressed out by them too, right? So it's a little bit of both. But what appears to be something fixed and identifiable with an enduring nature, when you try to determine what that enduring nature is, to define it and say, this is what it is, it's gone, unfindable. Here, but unfindable. That's the ultimate magic trick. What looks like things is not a thing. There are no things. There's no entities here. There's no phenomena here. There's no world here. There's no people living in a world. Because if you try to put your finger on what any of that stuff is, you won't find it. There's literally that term on the unfindability of phenomena is a term in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. When you go to investigate what something is, you never find it. It always moves away from you. That's that disappearance of the moment. Because it's as if you were to speak about this often, if you kind of slowed down the process of appearing of the moment. Here's a moment, like I'm slowing it, like slow motion, the moment's appearing. It appears like this. What I'm pointing to is here's the moment and it's appearing and it seems like it's taking a certain shape. And then I can go, oh, there's whatever it is. There's a tree, there's fear, there's joy, there's myself, there's the Zoom meeting. It has appeared. But reality in its aliveness, in its dynamism, in its non-static, it would seem fundamental nature, its aliveness, it doesn't stop moving. It doesn't freeze, like it doesn't reify as some, never concretizes as something, although it seems to. And in its, we could say it's just constantly becoming, but it never becomes something. Because the minute we think, oh, there it is, it's become fear or joy or a tree or a flower or a cloud, it is in the moment of it seeming to become something, it's becoming something else. There's never a point in time where it stops becoming, where it lands somewhere, where it arrives somewhere. It never arrives as something. And we're feeling this never arrival right now. As you feel your experience, it never arrives, it never comes to a conclusion about what it is. That's its unresolvability. You feel that? Well, you are feeling that actually. But consciousness is very persistently enjoying, it would seem, the implication of it landing somewhere and becoming something. Because if it didn't enjoy that process of seeming to become something identifiable, we wouldn't, nothing would be perceived. There would be no experience, there would be no perceptions, there would be no world being perceived, seemingly, right? But it, but it's like I was just listening to this beautiful. It was a recorded reading of the teacher Longchenpa, the Tibetan teacher, and Longchenpa was talking about. I'd never really heard. Maybe I'd heard it before, but I felt like I was hearing it for the first time. Describing the magical nature of this appearing as the echoes of what was. So the echo, it seems like you make a sound in the canyon, and I vocalize the sound, and what I vocalized in the instant it disappears, but it carries on as a kind of an echo of that initial vocalization. And Longchenpa was saying this is one way to kind of metaphorically talk about the apparent forms. They're like echoes of something that's no longer here, and that all we have is echoes. And yet we that's it. I mean, there's nothing else but the echoes that are vivid and palpable and present as experience. Like it could sound like I'm just sort of um, negating the whole world of experience somehow in what I'm saying when I'm way over here on the unresolvable, unfindable side of the spectrum. But what's all the way over here as unfindable and unresolvable is the findable and resolvable. In other words, your and my everyday existence of living a human life is at the same time no thing whatsoever, mirage-like, dream-like. It's both and way beyond both at the same time. Because you can't even resolve it as being unresolvable. You can't even say that it's unsayable. It's that unsayable. That's why the Buddhists say even emptiness is empty, which is that's how radical the emptiness is. Nagarjuna, the Buddhist philosopher, would say that this reality is beyond the extremes of existence and non-existence. So this side is the existence. Things are, they have permanence to them. They have enduring nature to them. They have thingness. That's that they exist, right? They are like the Zoom meeting exists. It's a thing that exists as a thing that we can name and we can partake of. And we exist as something participating in the Zoom meeting, right? That's the world of existence. But that's an extreme because that's not the whole story, right? Because on the other side of the dial, you can't find any of this as, in other words, it doesn't exist as something findable, right? That's my vanishing card. The moment vanishing, the minute you try to, before you can even grasp it, it vanishes, right? It's that elusive, that slippery. But Nagarjuna is pointing out that non-existence is also an extreme. Why? Because, okay, you can't find the world. It's non-existent. You can't find entities. They're non-existent. And yet, here they all are. So the non-existence is an extreme, and the existence is an extreme. Maybe that's what Buddha meant by the middle way, that it's neither existent nor non-existent. It's both and neither. It's fundamentally transcendental. And as philosophical as all of this may sound, and forgive me if it does, it's actually concretely, empirically what we're encountering right now. We're encountering the presence of the moment and its seeming describability and identifiability as whatever it seems to be. And if we notice with a little bit more sensitivity what's actually being felt, what's actually being perceived, we can discover that that's only half of the story, that it's at the same time gone and is, as the Zen Buddhists say, unborn, never came into existence. And it just turns out, I'm often talking about, that the discovery of the emptiness of this, the unfindability of it, is liberation from things. Because it is the things that we imagine are bothering us, are perturbing us, are stressing us, are threats to us that we have to defend ourselves against and navigate and sort out. And of course, we think we're someone who can be potentially overwhelmed and threatened and harmed and needs protection and so on. So the reification of the things of the world that are potential threats and us as a thing that's on the receiving end of those potential threats, seeing through that reification to realize you can't find them from another perspective. They're they're space-like and empty of identity, yet vividly present. Brings with it the flavor, you could say, the felt sense of freedom, because there's nothing missing, there's nothing lacking, there's nothing in conflict, there's nothing to resolve, there's nothing to fear. There's just this pure, inconceivable radiance, for lack of a better way to put it, that is without limit, that is without definition, that is without um, there's no way to say it. So yeah, so it seems like it's there, and when you go to look for it, you'll never find it. And yet, even though you can't find it, it will keep appearing, just like a rainbow. To laugh, I was thinking, as it occurred to me to kind of highlight what I just highlighted, I was thinking, well, um, this will be a short, preamble because I can't say very much about about what isn't a thing. But somehow I managed to go on longer than I usually do. So there you go. Um, is that radiance nothing? Well, it's this is the paradox, that this is shining. That's the radiance, shining in its appearing. Like, wow, this is the display of all of this incredible the dance of reality, it's sparkle, it's shine, I mean, it's just unreal, isn't it? The sounds, the colors, the textures, the flavors. So I could say, as I have been, that from one vantage, you can't pin down what any of it is. You can't determine. It's ungraspable, and in its ungraspable nature, it's nothing, not a thing. But it's not, as my friend Peter Brown used to say, it's not any old nothing. It's the wondrous shining forth of everything. It's um, just like the dream that appears, if your dreaming is anything like mine, as real could be, as real as the waking life when you're in the dream, right? Sometimes I even experience some dreams as even almost like more vividly real in the sense of like, wow, like the felt sense of intimacy and the felt sense of just the taste of reality in the dreams. I mean, it's palpably present in the dream state, isn't it? But none of that can be found. It's just a dreaming consciousness that shows up as an entire world that can be experienced. And it's a good metaphor for the so-called waking life. So in that sense, the radiance is nothing but it's everything at the same time, what we call everything.